Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone, and we need to have a serious talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves. Last year was one of the most successful seasons in franchise history. They made it to a Western Conference Finals. They had the Defensive Player of the Year in Rudy Gobert, a guy that everybody said they made a mistake trading for, proving his worth. Him and Karl-Anthony Towns built a ton of chemistry, and Cat made it back to the All-Star game, having an elite floor spacing season, and he had a 60-piece during the year. Anthony Edwards further vaulted himself towards superstar, making his first All-NBA team. Mike Conley was producing at a high level at the point guard spot. Jaden McDaniels became one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. Naz Reid won Sixth Man of the Year. This team was actually ridiculous, and they might have ended up as the 1 seed in the Western Conference if Cat didn't miss a good portion of the season with injury. But regardless, they go into the playoffs as one of the top teams. They take down the Phoenix Suns in a sweep. They beat the Denver Nuggets, who seemed kind of invincible at points during the season, and only ended up losing to a red-hot Mavericks team in the Western Conference Finals. Overall, highly successful season, and it felt like they were going to just run this thing back, try and build off that last year's success, and ultimately would be one of the powerhouses in the West again. And then they shocked the world by making the very controversial Karl-Anthony Towns for Julius Randle and Donte Divincenzo trade like a couple weeks before the season started. And I mean it when I say this came out of nowhere. This was one of the most shocking trades I have ever seen. No rumors, no build up, just boom, middle of the night, all of a sudden Cat is a New York Knick. And my initial reaction was probably similar to a lot of y'all's. I thought the Timberwolves were going to get worse through this deal. Because while Julius Randle and Donte Divincenzo are very good players, they're not the fit that Karl-Anthony Towns was with that team. His role to their success was vital. A ton of buy-in from him defensively, even though he's not the best defender in the world. It really started to work with him and Gobert as that pairing, an elite second option, somebody who didn't need the ball in his hands but could create if he needed to, one of the best outside shooting big men of all time, just really worked with their entire system. And not to mention, his roots there in Minnesota go all the way back to when he was drafted first overall, was supposed to be the franchise savior. It didn't really work out, and he was very willing to fade into the background a bit, let Ant become that guy, be that willing second option, buy in defensively. He did everything they asked from him last season, so to suddenly ship him off was shocking, and it felt like it was going to send some shockwaves through the Wolves franchise. Ultimately, I projected them to be a 4 seed, I believe, in the Western Conference. Felt like there was going to be a clear step back from them in overall record, but then it might be a move that was necessary because they were going to be in financial hell with the contracts that were on the books if they just ran it back for a couple more seasons, with Anthony Edwards getting paid and Karl-Anthony Towns making a ton of money, and Gobert and Jaden McDaniels and Nikhil Alexander-Walker and Naz Reid. Everybody was getting paid on that franchise, so they had to make a move at some point. They tried to get out in front of it, trade Cat while he had a bunch of value, get back some pieces that were interesting that they could still potentially flip, and maybe long term this will be a move that helps them win a championship by building out that financial flexibility and putting more talent down the road next to Anthony Edwards. But for the moment, they are definitely worse. And it's not just kind of worse, they are monumentally worse than they were last season. Right now, they're just playing like a bad basketball team. Last night, or I guess a couple nights ago as I'm uploading this, they faced off against the DeRozanless Sacramento Kings, who have been reeling as of late. Honestly, whoever lost that game was probably going to get this video made about them, and it ended up being the Wolves, who led by 12 in the fourth quarter and collapsed to lose by 11 points, scoring just 2 points total over the last 5 minutes and 11 seconds of the game against a Kings team that's not particularly known for their defense. And keep in mind, this was in Minnesota. They ended up getting booed off the court by their fans when this one was all said and done. And this gives them their 4th straight loss of the season. They fall to 8-10, putting them at the 12th seed in the Western Conference. For some perspective, they didn't have 10 losses till January 7th last year, and at that point, they were 25-10. So let's talk about what's gone wrong. The first thing is the defense. Last year, they were a juggernaut on that end. Historically, one of the better defenses compared to the competition that we've seen in quite some time. This year, they're just 12th in the league in defensive rating. Now, that's still decent, but it's no longer like firmly their identity as it was last season. Gobert's still been good defensively, but not as good as last year. Julius Randle is a disaster on that end. There are some moments like last night, the Kings game, when the Wolves went on a little run, he was completely locked in, and it's like, okay, this is what Minnesota can do. And then almost every other moment so far this season, he's just been completely out of it, making big mistakes, lapses defensively, letting guys, backdoor cut him. him or just falling asleep on rotations. It's really bad compared to Cat, who at least put in a ton of effort on that end. You've got Jaden McDaniels, who has been way worse defensively this season than last year. He's fouling a ton. They lost Kyle Anderson, who was good for them on that end. They don't really have that unique advantage anymore where they had this overwhelming size where it was Cat, it was Gobert, it was McDaniels. How do you operate amongst all those trees? Now they're a lot smaller than they were last season, so they don't even have that unique thing going for them. They've just kind of lost that defensive identity. The thing that made them so scary last season doesn't exist anymore. And then there's the offense, which was definitely their weaker side last season. They were 17th in the league, and technically it's better now. Like, they're above average at the moment on the offensive end, but the problem is they're an inconsistent mess, and as of late, it's been way below their season mark. Over the course of their 4-game losing streak, they've been the 7th worst offense in the entire league, and it really feels like there's never much of a plan. Like last night, one specific thing that bothered me is Domantas Sabonis got into real foul trouble, and getting a guy of his caliber out of the game would have been big for Minnesota, and at the very least, even if you don't foul him out, put him in a bunch of actions, target him, force him to make decisions, to maybe just let guys walk to the basket so he doesn't foul out because he's so important to that team, especially when DeMar DeRozan isn't playing. And it felt like they never even tried that. They never really went at him. And I mean, just in general, he's not a great defender, so utilize that to your advantage. It feels like it's mostly just, hey, Ant, go cook out there. Hey, Julius Randle, go cook out there. There's nowhere near the offensive cohesion that wasn't always there last season, but at moments was. A big contributor to their overall clunkiness is the spacing, where last year, you've got one of the greatest shooting big men of all time next to Anthony Edwards, a guy that no help defender is going to leave open, and now it's Julius Randle in his spot. And Randle had a really great shooting start to the season. I was hopeful it was going to carry over. He has some hot nights. He's a capable shooter on some occasions, but on the season, he's now down to 34.5%, and comparing that to what Cat did last year, it's night and day. Defenders now are perfectly fine with helping on the drive off of Randle, because if he takes that outside shot, sure, sometimes he's going to hit it and you're going to close out, but it's nowhere near as scary as Cat potentially shooting that shot. And this results in the paint being extremely clogged for Anthony Edwards, who's one of the best downhill attackers in the entire league. So he's had to settle for a lot more threes this season, and credit to him, he's become one of the best volume three-point shooters in the entire NBA, doing insane stuff on the perimeter right now. But if those threes start to dry up a little bit, if he regresses, or if he's just in, like, say, a big-time playoff game and they're not really hitting those threes, it's going to be really hard for them to get anything going down to the rim, because defenders are just going to collapse because they don't respect a lot of the shooters out there. Because it's not just Randle. Like, outside of Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Ant, nobody's shooting 40% from three on the season for the Wolves. Naz Reid is at 38.7, but again, Randle's at 34.5. Mike Conley is down to 34.2 after being lights out last season. Donte Divincenzo, who's supposed to be the shooter that helped revive some of their spacing and losing Cat, is shooting 31.5% this season. He's just been bad all over. Jaden McDaniels at 28.8%, and that's a massive concern, because not only has the defense regressed, but the offense has not grown, like, at all since they've given him this contract. That was a big hope when they gave him the money, was that he showed all these offensive flashes. If he could ever put that together somewhat consistently with the defense that he brings to the table, this is potentially an all-star level wing that you have on your hands. But right now, if he is shooting the ball on the perimeter, that's just a huge win for the defense, and they really don't care when he gets it out there. A couple nights ago against the Rockets, I think he was like 2 for 9 or something like that. He's one of the worst catch-and-shoot three-point shooters in the entire league so far this season. The overall three-point shooting for this team has been disastrous. It also hurts that Mike Conley, after last season being this amazing table setter, has really started to show his age, that efficiency has come way down. He's a step slower out there. I mean, he's 37. It's not surprising, but it is a big blow to this team's offensive cohesion. He does a lot for them, and it's all led to a lot of frustration with the Timberwolves, both from their fans. I've seen it a lot, but also within the team themselves, specifically with that incident that happened a few games ago against the Toronto Raptors. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it was late in the game where Julius Randle gets the ball and he has it up on the left wing, and Rudy Gobert has his defender completely sealed down low. It's a way smaller defender. It's a mismatch. He's calling for the ball, and Randle basically says, "Get out of the way, dude. I'm not giving you the basketball." He, like, looks him down and I believe, like, shooed him off, and so Gobert, frustrated, walks out of the paint very slowly and gets a 3-second violation, which is detrimental at that point in the game, and a close one that they really could use a win in. So Anthony Edwards is asking him afterwards, like, "What are you doing?" He's yelling at him, and Gobert kind of explains, and he rolls his eyes. He's clearly upset. And then at the end of the game, when it's all but over, they're going to lose to the Toronto Raptors, who are one of the worst teams in the NBA so far. Randle gets the ball, and he sees Gobert down low again, and throws him a rifle of a pass that just bricks off Gobert's hands. Randle walks off the court frustrated. Clearly, there are frustrations with this team, and it carried over to this last game where Anthony Edwards mentioned the booing and said, that's disrespectful, that's insane, but said, yeah, we suck, and basically said that the team after the Kings loss has no identity, and the only identity that they have is that they're soft as hell. Going from last year till now, the Wolves have had one of the most drastic vibe fall-offs that I have ever seen. It has been a historic one, and I expected, again, for them to take a solid step back, but they've just been way worse than I was expecting. Like Ant said, they've got no identity at all at the moment, and this could only continue to get worse. According to Tankathon, the Wolves have the second hardest schedule in the entire league the rest of the season, only behind the Sacramento Kings, who might get a video themselves coming up here at some point soon. The next 13 games for the Wolves, it's the Clippers, the Lakers, the Clippers, 2 Warriors games, the Knicks, the Warriors again, the Hawks, the Mavericks, the Rockets, the Spurs, the Thunder, and the Celtics. There's not one game on that schedule where I'm like, oh yeah, for sure, the Wolves are going to win that one. The closest thing is like the Hawks game, but the Hawks right now have like the same record as the Timberwolves, so that's nowhere near a given at the moment for this team. The vibes are at their lowest, but this is a stretch they have to go ahead and make improvements. If they go through this group of games and they look worse or about the way they've been playing, they're going to have a big problem on their hands, because right now they're 3 games back of the 6th seed in the Western Conference, and that's not anything super drastic at this point in the season. There's still so much basketball left to play, and they could ultimately put it all together, but if we go through this streak of games and they look poor, suddenly they have a big uphill battle to get back into those top 6 spots, where none of these Western Conference teams feel like they're slowing down at the moment, at least not the good ones. And so making it beyond the play-in into those top spots is going to be very difficult if you don't put it together fast, and you really don't want to end up in the play-in tournament in this Western Conference, because there are going to be some very good and likely very hungry teams in that group of games, and you lose 1, you lose 2, suddenly you're on the outside looking in after last year being one of the best teams in the NBA. There is even a possibility, which I don't think it's going to happen, because I feel like with Anthony Edwards on this roster, it just doesn't, where they don't even make the play-in tournament. It feels insane to even have to have this conversation about a team that a calendar year ago was pretty much on top of the world. They were untouchable. They looked amazing. They were on the rise. It all fell off a cliff in just a moment. That's kind of the way that the NBA and sports in general can go. So we'll have to see what happens with the Wolves. I'm not writing them off completely yet. It's just very clunky so far. It's not working. They've got a hard schedule in front of them, and it definitely feels like things are off right now. There are clear tensions in the locker room. It's boiling over, and if it continues that way, we might have some explosions ahead of us. With all that being said, those are my thoughts on the Timberwolves at the moment. Let me know down below in the comments. How do you feel about the Wolves? Can they turn the season around? Are they doomed? Was the trade a massive mistake? You still feel like it's something that they had to do, and ultimately it's just going to take a few years for that to come to fruition. I appreciate y'all watching. Leave a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. As always, would love to hear your thoughts on topics that I should make videos about throughout the season. But yeah, appreciate y'all for watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.